Hello. All right. Moving right along. I think that there's lots of opportunities here for me to make a joke. We're about to get into the Cannabis Startups Blaze Up panel. And so I'm not going to make a joke. I'm just going to get those folks on stage. I don't want to get in trouble. Brendan Kennedy from Privateer Holdings, Geoff Lewis from Founders Fund, and our moderator, Ryan Lawler. Big round of applause, please.
All right. This is really exciting. I'm really glad you guys could be here this morning with me. So I'm not the only guy on stage who's probably high.
You are, actually.
But you seem so relaxed. Okay, anyway. So before you founded Privateer, Brendan, you were COO of a subsidiary of Silicon Valley Bank. So why did you decide to leave a lucrative career in a bank and grow pot?
So about 5 years ago, I was at a subsidiary of Silicon Valley Bank, and we had about 3,000 venture capital-backed startups or venture capital firms that were clients, and a technology company in the medical cannabis industry came across my desk, and I thought, well, that's certainly different than anything I had seen, and we started exploring the industry around the country and around the world, and realized that the end of cannabis prohibition was inevitable, and that we could build companies that would help fuel the end of prohibition. So we quit our jobs and put together Privateer Holdings.
Okay. I was going to ask this later, but you jumped right in. So prohibition is a strong word. And when you talk about the end of prohibition being inevitable, at a point in time where cannabis is still not entirely legal, how do you justify that? I mean, there's all sorts of legislation and laws and whatever that needs to be worked through first.
Sure. So we're in a period of transition out of a state of prohibition to a state of legalization or re-legalization of cannabis. And we're at a point where the politicians and the bureaucrats are the last ones to change. And when you look at America, our fundamental thesis is that this is a mainstream product consumed by mainstream Americans. 54% to 58% of Americans believe that this product should be legal. About 85% believe that medical cannabis should be legal. And you can't get 85% of Americans to agree on anything, but they agree on this.
Okay. Geoff, you look like a guy who likes to party. Is that why you made this investment?
No. So from our end, it always starts with sort of a macro. We always like to sort of formulate a macro idea about the world that we don't think many other people agree with. And for us, in this instance, the high-level macro idea is that for the last 75 plus years, there's been this really crazy war that doesn't make much sense, that was politically motivated for really range of bizarre reasons in this country, and that's been the war on drugs. And one of the key tools to perpetuate the war on drugs over the last number of decades was the demonization of cannabis. Despite what medical professionals, scientists, millions and millions of Americans would say, cannabis has really been used as this tool to perpetuate this war on drugs. And we think that's coming to an end, as Brendan mentioned. And we think that the war on drugs has been, or at least I think it's been, really bad for our country on all these levels. Even if you just look at who gets arrested for cannabis possession, it's bad on a racial justice level. 8x more black Americans versus white Americans are in jail for cannabis possession versus whites. It's bad on a social level. And so the legalization of cannabis is, we think, socially good. It's going to be good for society. And so we wanted to find the right company to invest in that space. And one of the companies that we found that we were really excited about was Privateer.
Okay, so let's talk about that and the criminal justice and all that. How weird is it that you're a bunch of white guys that are going to make bank off this product that, largely African Americans, largely Hispanic people are still going to jail for?
Yeah, so they're certainly the most impacted by prohibition. Last year we arrested 850,000 Americans for cannabis possession or distribution, about 750,000 for possession. And those communities have been devastated by prohibition. Someone goes to jail, they can't get student loans, they can't get home loans, they can't vote in many cases. It's important for us to create the brands that fuel change. We're starting to be able to recruit a more diverse workforce. It has been difficult. We're certainly one of the most diverse companies in this industry, and hopefully that's something that can change over the coming years.
Okay, from a political standpoint, are you doing any lobbying around legalization or decriminalization?
We do lobbying in individual countries. So we do some lobbying in Canada, and we do lobbying in individual U.S. states, such as Oregon and Washington, and here in New York, where Governor Cuomo signed the Compassionate Care Act of New York in July. And we do some federal lobbying more on an informal basis.
Okay. I'm kind of interested in the name, because historically, privateers were basically pirates commissioned by governments that were allowed to operate, in certain areas to ransack, opposing navies and stuff like that. What are you trying to say about the company with that name?
So it's a play on the war on drugs. It's a play on the war on cannabis. We believe that we can help fuel the end of prohibition. In our minds, the war is lost by the U.S. government already. It's just a matter of timing until it ends. And we felt that we could build a team of people. We currently have about 250 employees at Privateer and our 3 subsidiaries who are smart, they're professional, they come from places like Microsoft and Amazon and Starbucks, and they're motivated every day to end prohibition, and that's really different. And so we think that we've built a workforce that can help fight that war.
Okay, so are you pirates or not?
We're not pirates, we're privateers. So,
okay.
During the American Revolution, privateers sort of ransacked the British Navy to help end the Revolutionary War, and that's the theme. That's how we think about it.
Okay.
We invested in spite of the name at Founders Fund. I don't think we loved the privateer name. The subsidiaries obviously have brands have different names. I think the names of the brands and different businesses are really good. Tilray, Marley Naturals, Leafly, and that's sort of what is the most important from a naming standpoint.
So let's talk about the different companies inside of Privateer, the holding company. You've got 3 right now, Leafly, Tilray, and Marley Natural coming up. So maybe give a little bit of background on what each of them does.
Sure. So Leafly was founded about 3.5, almost 4 years ago, and it helps cannabis consumers and patients learn about individual strains of cannabis and their uses. So someone who has cancer and is going through chemotherapy can look at strains that other cancer patients are using. They can research those strains, and then they can find a location near them where it's legal to obtain those strains. So we list about 1,200 strains of cannabis and about 2,400 dispensaries around the world. And last month we had about 5.5 million visits to Leafly. It operates in English and French, Canadian, and Spanish. So we operate internationally wherever there are dispensaries. And we have content on there related to cannabis.
It's basically a search engine for pot.
It's a search engine that answers 2 questions: what and where. So someone who's a retail consumer can find a strain that they want to use on a Friday night where it's legal in the U.S. and around the world. The second company is Tilray, which operates primarily in Canada right now, where they have a very different system. We have a federal license and operate one of the largest federally licensed medical cannabis grows in the world. It's technologically advanced, it's pharmaceutical grade, and we ship, using the Canadian model, every day we ship hundreds of packages of medical cannabis directly to patients from this 60,000 square foot grow facility in British Columbia. And then the third company is called Marley Natural, which we did in partnership with the family of Bob Marley, and it's a retail cannabis brand based on Jamaican cannabis strains that we will launch at the end of this year. And we have 3 different product lines, Jamaican cannabis strains, topicals and lotions that contain hemp and cannabis, and then the third line are accessories, so products used to consume cannabis or store and store the product.
So that's pretty wild. What are the Marleys like?
Well, there's a lot of them. There's 11 children and his wife Rita, and so we got to know them throughout this process. You know, they had been approached by lots, as you can imagine, they'd been approached by lots of people over the years to launch a brand in this space. For us, they came to us about 2 years ago, and it was an obvious deal. You know, you can't think of a larger global cultural icon that's more tightly connected to this product, and so it was an obvious play.
But the family itself, I heard that you had to basically go and visit each one individually and get them on board. And
yeah, we've probably had 1,000 meetings over 2 years. Not as many as I had with Geoff, but it was a lot. And all around the world, and a lot of them came to Canada to see the grow facility. Last week, I spent the week in Jamaica. I have a very unusual job in that, you know, last week, I'm here today. Last week, I was at a very large outdoor cannabis grow in Jamaica. You know, certainly things I never expected to do.
Okay, Geoff, you've seen the grow facility. What's it like?
It's mind-blowing. The Canadian facility is mind-blowing, not in a metaphorical sense. It's one of the most state-of-the-art production facilities across any industry that I've ever seen. And you know, we'd been talking to this company for, at this point, over 2 years. We talked to them for 1.5 years before we decided to make the investment. And when we went up and visited the facility in Nanaimo, British Columbia, Canada, it really came together for me, the executional talents that this team has that really do set them apart, I believe, in this market. So when I first met Brendan, he was like, we're trying to do something in Canada. We think it's a really good market. Here's why. We're trying to find a company to maybe make a majority investment in. They weren't able to find one, so they built their own in like 3 months. And they built this incredible 60,000 plus square foot production facility, created a brand, and a few short months later we're shipping. And in Canada, I'm actually Canadian, you may be able to tell from my accent, but up in Canada, 24 hours after placing an order on the Tilray website, the cannabis arrives at your door. It's just really incredible. So I think that business in and of itself as a standalone business has a lot of room to scale, and it's something that maybe that model will ultimately be inspiration for how medical cannabis is distributed in the United States as well.
Right. So you were a sort of anchor investor, but not actually the lead. Privateer raised $75 million, which is a shit ton of money. But why was Founders Fund the only firm that was willing to put its name on this deal?
Maybe we don't care about what other people think about us enough, or something like that, something crazy like that. But you know, it seems to us like the type of thing that is controversial, but that most people secretly agree makes a lot of sense, at least from a decriminalization or medical legalization standpoint. You know, we live and die based on our founders. That's the whole ethos of our firm, and so we wouldn't make an investment that we're not willing to talk about if it would be helpful for the company and the founders. And you know, we're proud of the investments that we make, whether the companies end up working or not. We live or die as a firm based on our founders, and so we are okay sharing the fact that we made this investment.
I get this impression that having your name, because you announced that you were investing before the round was actually closed. So I get this impression that Founders Fund putting its name on the deal was actually able to help Brendan get other investment firms or investors comfortable with this. Is that true?
I think that what ended up happening is when we made the investment, it was this very contrarian market. People were really sort of nervous about investing in it. And then it very quickly shifted immediately to this extremely crowded market after the announcement came out, which is a little bit disturbing to me, but it's gotten a lot more crowded since it was announced, I think.
I would say that it gave other smart investors permission to look at this space because Founders was so willing to go public with this investment, and we started to see more institutional investors invest in other companies, and certainly we've had 8-figure investments from other firms with us.
Okay. Is Snoop an investor?
Our investor list, other than Founders, is confidential, but I can say Snoop is not an investor.
Oh.
Yeah. Not that I didn't try.
Okay. Not that he didn't try. I'm sure he would have loved to try the product. More seriously, though, so Snoop's got a fund that's focused on making investments in this segment. We're seeing a few other funds pop up with the idea of investing solely in the cannabis market. Geoff, as an investor, what do you think about that as a thesis? And just the idea of like going all in only on one particular market segment.
Somewhat skeptical that there is that much opportunity for like cannabis-focused funds. I think maybe there will be a few that will work. I think there's some great folks that are starting these vehicles. Our view on these things always tends to be that in the best markets, there tend to be just a handful of companies that end up dominating over like a 10+ year time frame. And I think in this market, there's going to be a limited number of really outstanding investment opportunities. We hope Privateer is one of them, and there will probably be a few others. But I'm not sure that I would want to be an LP in a cannabis-only fund that's forming now at this stage of the game.
When you talked about founding Privateer, that was kind of the idea originally, right?
It was the original idea, and what we realized is that it's a really different industry than what I was used to in Silicon Valley. In that, especially 5 years ago, it was very fragmented. There were no leaders, there were no standards. The companies weren't as professional. The managers, the leaders weren't as smart. That's changed. That's gotten better over the last 5 years. But I'm skeptical as well of certainly cannabis-only funds. A lot of people are out there building the monster.com of cannabis, or a site where you can find dating sites for cannabis consumers. And I just don't think that those are
I think as this continues to
opportunities.
mainstream, like regular funds are going to invest in these companies too. So if you're a cannabis-specific VC fund, you're going to be competing with every other investor to invest in the best cannabis companies, which is sort of the negative competition angle of these vertically focused funds.
Okay, so we talk about this as a mainstream product. It's going to become a mainstream product. Full disclosure, I live in California. I recently got my doctor's recommendation to help treat my anxiety and insomnia. When do we stop pretending that this is medicine and just accept that people like me want to get high?
I really disagree with that, honestly. I think there are a lot of people like you. I also know people. Part of the reason why we were inspired to invest in this company was a friend of mine dealing with a serious illness, was using Leafly to discover strains. Her doctor had suggested cannabis. It really did help her with real problems like insomnia related to her illness. I do think people really do use this product. There's a lot of recreational use as well, but it is fun to joke about. But one of the things I love about this team is they don't strike me as the type of people who use the product recreationally, and they take this very seriously. They're one of the few teams that I've met in this market that hasn't offered me more than a gram of product to sample. I've never sampled any of Privateer's products because I'm legally not able to in the jurisdictions in which they're selling cannabis. And that's a positive thing. I should not be offered free weed in order to invest. So, yeah.
And I know you meant that as a joke, and there's some truth in it, but you couldn't look a mother of a child who has epilepsy in the eyes and make that joke, right? And so this is a different product in that consumers and patients are on a spectrum from irrefutably legitimate patients, irrefutably legitimate, to more of wellness consumers, to people who just want to consume cannabis on a Friday night instead of a bottle of Chardonnay. And our thesis is that that entire segment should be allowed to legally consume this product, and that brands and companies will emerge to provide that entire market with products.
Okay, well, now that I'm schooled, we're out of time. So thanks again for joining us, both of you guys.
Thank you.
For having me.